Go ahead, Mark. I've already stopped or started recording.
Okay, thank you. Okay, folks, I hope you weren't inundated with all the email attachments I sent you the other day. We'll be addressing each of the charts one at a time as we go through. They're not that complicated. Anyway, so what we're doing tonight is we're continuing on our little exploration of Baha'i cosmology with a K. Last time we had talked about the possibility of there being only one level in the world, i.e. God, or two, or three. So tonight we're going to briefly look at 4 levels and then spend most of our time talking about 5 levels. So when it comes to the 4-level version, Baha'u'llah discusses the 5-fold classification of being in considerable detail in his Tablet of All Food. He also mentions this model in passing in the Valley of Unity in the 7 valleys, but only includes 4 valleys there. So tonight we only have 13 readings, but again, I'm going to ask for volunteers to show their hands, to raise their hands so that I can call you out. So I need somebody to read number 1 for me. First person. Okay, from Point Roberts. Larry.
Yeah, Milton.
Okay. Oh, is it? I'm sorry, have I got it? I thought Milton was your last name. I beg your pardon.
No,
Sorry. I'm still shell-shocked by the number of people in the course.
well, you said to change it so you say where we are, right? Anyway,
Yes.
though
Okay.
the worlds of God be infinite, yet some refer to them as 4. Others have called these worlds of the heavenly court Lahut, the celestial dominion Jabarut, of the divine kingdom Malakut, and of mortal existence Narsut. Baha'u'llah, the call of the divine beloved.
So that brings us to this particular chart. So here we have the names that were just read out here in this first left-hand column, and their translation in English as the world of the heavenly court, the world of the Empyrean heaven, the Malakut is the kingdom of angels, and we are living in the mortal world. And it's interesting that Baha'u'llah refers to the type of time in each of those by different names. Now, I have to say, I'm not 100% sure about the differences, but in our case, time is something that begins at a particular point and then continues on. Whereas in terms of eternity, there is no beginning. But the ones in between, I'm a little bit less familiar with. So if you see Jabarut, whose beginning is not to be seen, but which is known to have an end, which is kind of mysterious. And then Malakut hath a beginning, but whose end is not revealed. Okay, so I don't claim to fully understand those concepts. Maybe somebody can help me with that later. But let's not get hung up about that. What I want to do now is switch to the 5-level version, which is much more common. According to one of the early Sufis, Abu Talib al-Makki, who died in 996, there are 5 divine presences. Here they are. He simply added the essence of God to the top of the 4th-level list mentioned by Baha'u'llah in the 7 valleys. So here it is, this top, let's see if I can highlight it, this one, Hahut. So
Your screen is not being shared.
No?
Yeah, we're seeing it here.
Yeah, so
You're seeing it here.
Okay, then
seeing
it's
it.
just
Yeah,
Oh.
that's being shown.
Okay. Ooh. How to disrupt you. Okay, so anyway, the Hahut is the, for all intents and purposes, the essence of God. And really, we can't even say as much as we've said here in that first line. It's so transcendent, there's no point in even considering it. And one way to be looking at it is it's like the background, the whole screen itself, and then beyond. the Lahut is the reality being, which is the divinity or the personal God. So I take that to be the first manifestation of God is the primal will. And that I think is what this Lahut is really talking about. But it's also where the manifestations of God are in their unitedness. It's only when you come down to Jabrut, which is the world of angels, where you're looking at the manifestations as they are in their individual natures. They also show up in the subtle world, the Malakut, which is the world of the dominion. And the word dominion shows up many, many times in the writings. But most people don't think of it as actually a level above physical reality. And then there's our world, the corporeal or human world, the world of the kingdom. So this was written 1,000 years ago, just to give you a little sense of where we're at. Now, in Ibn Arabi's cosmology, the hidden treasure's desire to be known did not result in a model of Neoplatonic emanation, as it did in Ibn Sina's case, as we will see in classes 7 and 8, nor did it point to a creation out of nothing, as it did in Christianity. Rather, it led Ibn Arabi to posit a succession of manifestations of being, brought about by divine light of varying degrees. His cosmology thus consists of a succession of theophanies, and the Arabic word is tajaliyat, which will immediately remind Baha'is of the writing of Baha'u'llah by that same name. The word tajali literally means disclosing something behind a veil. Baha'is are familiar with the plural form of the word tajaliyat from the title of one of the tablets of Baha'u'llah, pages 45 to 54 of the book. In the Baha'i case, the Arabic term is translated as effulgences. This rare word comes from the Latin effulgentia, which is defined in the Oxford English Dictionary as splendid radiance. The adjective effulgent means shining out brightly, sending forth intense light, resplendent or radiant. For Ibn Arabi and many other Sufis, creation is essentially a theophany or a tajalli. As such, it is an act of the divine imaginative power. This divine creative imagination is described by Henri Corbin as a theophanic imagination. Now, that word theophany or theophanic comes from an ancient Greek term meaning the appearance of a deity. It refers to an encounter with a deity that manifests in an observable and tangible form. And we're going to see some examples of that in our coming readings, starting next week. It is often confused with other types of encounters with a deity. But these interactions are not considered theophanies unless the deity reveals itself in a visible form. So just hearing his voice, smelling his fragrance, etc., is not what is called a theophany. So traditionally, the term theophany was used to refer to appearances of the gods in ancient Greek and Near Eastern religions. So it goes back a great way. As I've explained in Ibn Arabi's writings, creation consists of a series of manifestations of greater or lesser intensities of light. Each of these tajallis is a self-manifestation of God, or to put it another way, one of God's self-disclosures. As Ibn Arabi understands it, the cosmos as a whole is comprised of the billions of ways in which God displays himself. The notion of tajalli is so central to Ibn Arabi's thinking that William Chittick entitled his second major work on Ibn Arabi, The Self-Disclosure of God. So this next chart is from Ibn Arabi. It's adapted from Toshihiko Izutsu's masterful study of Ibn Arabi called Sufism and Taoism, which was published in 1983. You will notice that all but the first world are created by tajallis, self-manifestations, or emanations of God. The first world is the divine essence itself, which properly speaking shouldn't be included in any list at all. Okay, so Hahut up here is utterly transcendent. These are all the other levels that we were talking about with Al-Maki, etc. They all are the result of a tajalli from Hak, or the absolute, which is another name for God. So these bottom four are ways that God displays himself in the worlds that he's created. They're all existing at the same time as each other, and they're probably interpenetrating each other, just as the world of humans interpenetrates the ones of the animals, the vegetables, and the minerals. But they don't really know that we're here. The animals to a certain extent, but they don't understand us. And the same kind of barrier exists between each of these worlds. You don't really properly understand the one above you, let alone the 1, 2, and 3 above you. Now this next diagram, I'll show you the whole thing here. Some 33 years ago, our own Jack McLean wrote an article called Prolegomena to a Baha'i Theology in the Journal of Baha'i Studies in 1992. He included a brilliant chart that I've used on numerous occasions over the years. It distills the Sufi and Baha'i evidence into a form that is both accurate and eminently clear. Once again, I have found it to be an indispensable resource when introducing the many worlds of God. So yet again, thank you, Jack. You did a fantastic job back then. Okay, so what I'm aiming for in this course is this number 3, the realm of Malakut. Now notice some of the other names that are given to it in the Baha'i writings. The angelic realm, the world of execution, and the concourse on high, plus the kingdom of Abha. Now, I don't know about you in your readings of the writings, but I have always had the sense that the concourse of on high was someplace that really dedicated Baha'is get to go to when they die. And it's the same with the kingdom of Abha. So that's sort of just a little quick paintbrush view of what that world is like. So you have those 5 names now in this area of stage 3. Now, a few years ago, I compiled a slightly longer list based on Jack's work and that of Mujan Momin in his 2005 article on the God of Baha'u'llah. And that can be found through the Baha'i Library online. Okay, so here they are. Maybe make that a bit smaller. Okay, so we've just seen the concourse on high and the Abha kingdom, but you'll also see references to it as the unseen world. The Crimson Ark may not be one that you've thought of before, but that's another name for this world. The paradise of justice. Now we're going to see the next 2 in one of the readings, verdant greenland and the fathomless deep of the kingdom of God. Then there's the scene of God's transcendent glory, the celestial kingdom, and then the realm of the execution of the decrees and commands of God. So these are all direct quotes from the writings. Now, I found it interesting that other religions also refer to this same world. They call it the world of the angels. Some call it heaven. a lot of the people we're going to study this next few weeks is the world of similitudes, which is the Alamo Mithal, which can also be translated as the imaginal world, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in detail in a few minutes. Okay, where are we at? So let's go back to Jack's chart for a minute. As you can see, Malakut stage 3 is situated between the world of Nasut, where we are down here, and the realm of Jabarut, which is the spiritual world. In fact, Jabarut is where the manifestations reside in the station of distinction, which means their individual natures. You have to go all the way up to Lahut to see that they're living in the station of essential unity. So that's interesting that you have to realize that the manifestations of God live on all 4 of those levels at the same time. They have equal access to any one of them. Whereas we're stuck down here in number 4, the world of Nasut, and we make little forays once in a while into the next stage, many of which we forget about because it's too foreign to us. So the manifestations are truly unique in terms of the rest of the human race. So the point I really want to make is that Nasut and Jabarut are separated by the world of Malakut. Ibn Arabi calls Malakut the world of imagination or the imaginal realm. So due to its intermediate position, Malakut is a transitional world through which the messages from the manifestations come as they descend into our world. For this reason, Ibn Arabi likened it to an isthmus. Barzak is the word in Arabic. An isthmus stands between 2 other things, usually larger chunks of land. So in this particular case, though, we're talking about the individual manifestations of God and the sensible world. Malakut is the isthmus between those 2. So this midway status means that the imaginal realm possesses attributes belonging to both of the worlds it separates. As Ibn Arabi observed, this is the place in which spirits become manifest and bodies become spiritualized. He referred to Malakut as an all-comprehensive world because nothing on either side of it escapes its embrace. In other words, it is truly immense. In Ibn Arabi's school, a human being can also be seen as an isthmus because it stands between 2 other things. In this case, its divine and its physical natures, and therefore possesses attributes of both natures. Like Malakut, humans may be understood as all-comprehensive, for there is nothing in either the divine or the physical worlds they have access to that escapes them. Okay, so now we're ready for a second reading, and I see that either Roxanne or Rob is ready to read number 2 for us. Thank you very much.
Imaginal things share the attributes of 2 sides, just as the soul shares the attributes of spirit and body. The most common example of a concrete imaginal thing is the image in a mirror. Your mirror image is both yourself and not yourself at the same time. In certain respects and for certain purposes, for example, as a guide when you are combing your hair, you can treat the image as yourself. Nevertheless, the image is not you, since it is simply light rays reflected from a piece of glass.
Okay, thank you. So Whether we realize it consciously or not, human beings actually enter this world of imagination on a daily basis through their dreams. Okay, so Tahare, if you wouldn't mind, we need number 3 at this point.
If we look inside ourselves, the best place to find imaginal things is in our dreams. Here we have a tremendous diversity of objects and people that are both themselves and not themselves, or both ourselves and not ourselves. The tree you see in a dream is a tree. It is not a frog or a baseball, yet it is not a tree if we mean by tree something that grows in the ground in the physical world. Or again, the tree that you see in the dream is both you and not you. It is not you because it is a tree. It is not you because it is simply the picture of a tree as imagined by you. Saricho Murata and William Chittick, The Vision of Islam.
Okay, so I should say that Sachiko and William are longtime mates. They've been married for decades. From Ibn Arabi's point of view, it is the soul that is conscious while we dream. This is the microcosmic dimension of Malakut. Okay, and so I see that Aaron, Bill, and Sherry are all ready to read number 4. So in
Notice-
3-part harmony. Yeah.
Notice that the domain of dreaming is the soul. Hence, the soul is often called the microcosmic world of imagination, while the world where jinn and satans live is called the macrocosmic world of imagination. The microcosm is the human individual, while the macrocosm is the whole cosmos.
Okay, thank you. So another aspect of the world of imagination is that it's characterized by continual change. Nothing within the intermediate world stays the same for 2 successive moments. Nothing there is fixed. We know this because every dream image is constantly in the process of being transformed into other images. So this realization has direct implications for the nature of the human soul itself. Okay, Ingrid, I see you're all set for number 5. Oop, you're muted.
Sorry, Mark.
No problem.
Lack of fixity is important to keep in view when we discuss the soul. People tend to think of the soul as something solid and defined, on the analogy of the body, with which it is usually paired. Even the body, of course, is not fixed, but it is relatively solid and constant, especially when compared to a dream image, also from the Vision of Islam.
Thank you. So as a go-between, the soul does not share in the relative fixity of the divine or the physical realms that it is constantly interacting with. Tamrat, you're welcome to start reading number 6, if you wouldn't mind, please.
All right, thank you, sir. The soul is born from the meeting between a relatively fixed body and the divine breath, which is pure, unchanging humanicity. Hence, the 2 sides of the soul are relatively constant. But the soul itself is a flux, a continual flow of impressions, a running stream of consciousness and awareness. Muslim cosmologists often say the soul is, quote, an ocean without shore, close quote. The soul is like the ocean because the ocean has hidden depths and moves constantly. As the waves on its surface make clear. However, unlike the ocean, the soul has no boundaries, no fixed limits. When we discuss the return to God, we will see that the non-fixity of the soul has important consequences for human becoming. It means that because human beings are not this or that, they can be anything, and what they become in this world determines the form they will take in the next world. This from Sachko Muhata. Sorry.
That's all right, no problem. Thank you very much. That was a lengthy passage.
Yes.
Okay. So let's just take a little dive into the deep end, shall we? Baha'u'llah mentions Malakut, the angelic realm, in his Tablet of All Food. The following passage is his description of the word food as it is understood in the realm above the physical world. And I warn you, this is going to be a tough one to figure out. Okay, I need some more volunteers. Who's up for reading who hasn't already read? Red, okay, there we go. Take it away, number 7.
Right. It signifieth the paradise of justice, the verdant, that is the green land, the fathomless deep of the kingdom of God, allotted to those servants whom neither traffic nor merchandise beguile from the remembrance of God. I guess that's from Quran, verse 24:7. Since they are the companions of the light, they enter therein with the permission of God and find rest upon the carpet of the Almighty. This is from Tablet of the Food, provisional translation by Juan Cole.
Okay, well, now I don't know, we don't really have time to go into an explanation of this extremely challenging tablet of Baha'u'llah's, where he talks about what food is at the different levels that we're talking about, the 5 levels. But what he's saying here is that Malakut, which is known by these other names, and that's where I got the verdant greenland and the fathomless deep of the kingdom of God, that's in the list we saw earlier. This is where the people who have not been beguiled by traffic or merchandise end up receiving the permission of God and end up resting upon the carpet of the Almighty. So my way of understanding this is where you go when you have had a great life, you've done what you were supposed to do, and this is your compensation. So that's what Malakut is. So I don't want to go into any more detail about that, partly because I haven't refreshed my memory on that subject for a long time. But it's worth digging into. Okay, now according to Juan Cole, this realm is inhabited by those of God's servants who have detached themselves from the riches of the material world. In other words, human beings may attain this world while still living in physical reality, in Nasut. Those who do are said to be angelic in nature. And I bet each of you has met 1 or 2 of these people in your lifetime. While Jabarut is the world in which God's decrees and commands are created, Malakut is the world in which they are carried out. In a meditation revealed during the fast, Baha'u'llah distinguishes between the Jabarut of decree and the Malakut of the execution of the decree. In earlier dispensations, the residents in this realm were called angels. while in the Baha'i writings they are referred to as the concourse on high. The realm itself is also known as the all-glorious, the Abha paradise, the Abha kingdom, and the unseen world. Baha'u'llah provides a more detailed explanation in the Tablet de Varka. Now, this particular quote, even though it's got Mujan Momin's name here, he's the translator. This is Baha'u'llah's own utterance. So Heather is going to read that for us. Number 8, please. Heather, you're muted.
Okay, sorry. The meaning of the kingdom Malakut in its primary sense and degree is the scene of his transcendent glory. In another sense, it is the world of similitudes, Alam-i Mithal, which existeth between the dominion on high, Jabarut, and this mortal realm, Nasut. Whatever is in the heavens or on the earth has its counterpart in that world. Whilst a thing remaineth hidden and concealed within the power of utterance, it is said to be of the dominion, Jabarut, and this is the first stage of its substantiation, Taqid. Whenever it becometh manifest, it is said to be of the kingdom, Malak. The power and potency it deriveth from the first stage, it bestoweth upon whatever lieth below.
Thank you. So now you're starting to get a sense of the way that Baha'u'llah conceived of these different levels or different worlds or presences of God. They're emanating from one another. From the primal will, then you get Jabarut, then you get Malakut, then you get Nasut. Okay, so if there's a message that has to come from Lahut, it has to descend through Jabarut, take on clothes in Malakut that are suitable to the audience, and then it shows up in Nasut here, where we start to try and understand it. So Momin provides 2 helpful footnotes to this passage. The first, he says, Baha'u'llah explains elsewhere that the scene of his transcendent glory is the place of the residence of the manifestation. In other words, the manifestation of God resides in the world of Malakut. However, as we saw a few minutes ago, he also dwells in Jabarut and Lahut. Before we look at the second footnote, I'd like to say a final word about the value of knowing about these 5 worlds of God. I have found that it helps to clarify some of the seemingly opaque language in the Baha'i writings, especially for those of us who did not grow up in a Muslim environment. As an example, Mujan Momin draws attention to a single sentence within the long obligatory prayer. As he explains this passage, 4 groups appear to be testifying to the existence of God. Okay, Hangame, that is number 9.
I testify unto that whereunto have testified all created things, and the concourse on high, and the inmates of the all highest paradise, and beyond them the tongue of grandeur itself, from the all glorious horizon, that thou art God. Baha'u'llah Prayers and Meditation.
Okay, thank you. Now, we need another volunteer to read the next one. In English, it's easy to miss the hidden dimensions of this passage. Inserting the Arabic equivalents transforms what might appear to be fanciful, flowery language into a hierarchy of divine worlds. And take it away, Jennifer. You can explain this to us.
I testify unto that whereunto have testified all created things, Nasut, and the concourse on high, Malakut, and the inmates of the all highest paradise, Jabarut, and beyond them the tongue of grandeur itself, from the all glorious horizon, Lahut, and that thou art God, Hahut. Baha'u'llah Prayers and Meditations.
So there it is. The whole hierarchy just sitting there waiting for people to understand it. That's why it's worthwhile studying this particular notion. Now to Momon's second footnote. It concerns the world of similitudes. And I see Maria has graciously agreed to read number 11 for us.
Alam y Mithal, the French Orientalist and philosopher Henri Corbin, has preferred to coin the phrase imaginal world to translate this term, since the usual translation, imaginary world, gives the idea that this is something that does not truly exist. Whereas, in fact, the realm of Malakut, being ontologically closer to the absolute, is, if anything, more real than this physical world.
Thank you, Marie. That's a really important point. That as you move up the layers, the level of vividness of reality increases. So as Momon notes here, Henri Corbin is the person responsible for creating the phrase, the imaginal world. So this is what he looks like. Maybe I'll just make it a bit smaller so you can see. It's got a pretty good comb over going on there. Anyway, here is the high-level overview of his numerous accomplishments provided by Corbin's official website. And again, I need a volunteer. Let's see who can do this for us. Number 12. It's a long one, but it reads easily. Oh, Elizabeth, thank you very much.
We only see the picture.
I know. I'm going to switch back. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit punch drunk here. Okay, Elizabeth, you're muted at the moment. There you go.
Thanks. Orientalist and philosopher, Corbin is one of the most prominent thinkers of the 20th century, disciple of Etienne Gilson and Louis Massignon, whom he succeeded in the chair for the study of Islam at the École Pratique des Hautes Études at the Sorbonne. He was one of the fundamental pillars with C.J. Jung and M. Eliade, among others, of the Eranos Circle, 1949 to 1977, director of the Department of Iranology of the Franco-Iranian Institute of Tehran, 1946 to 1970, professor for more than 30 years at the University of Tehran, and a founding member of the University of St. John of Jerusalem. Henri Corbin opened the eyes of the West about the existence of a completely unknown world. The deep spirituality of the great mystics and Shiite philosophy developed in the East Muslim world, particularly in Iran, after the death of Averroes. His work centered on the Islamic knowledge and spirituality, but developed in the context of the three monotheistic religions, has a considerable number of studies on rituals as well as translations and editions of ancient unpublished Arabic and Persian texts that he recovered himself patiently in the libraries of Turkey and Iran. Okay, official Henri Corbin's website. Okay, that tells you how to get to the website.
Thank you. So in other words, this is a fellow that spent a great deal of time in Iran. I think a third of every year for the last 30 or 40 years of his life he spent in Tehran, working with people in their original language of Persian. So he really knew more than you would ever want to know about the subject that we're talking about. And many of the passages that we're going to be looking at come from him. So you'll be hearing his name a lot. So Corbin's meticulous descriptions of the imaginal realm can be found in several of his writings, two of which stand out for me. There was a 30-page article published in 1972 called Mundus Imaginalis, or The Imaginary and the Imaginal. This itemizes most of the imaginal realm's fundamental characteristics. Then there was Spiritual Body and Celestial Earth, from Mazdian Iran to Shiite Iran, which was published in 1977. It provides lengthy excerpts from the writings of 11 prominent theosophers in Islam. Now, that's a term he uses to refer to philosophers of the divine, not those who are followers of Madame Blavatsky. He even includes 40 pages from the enormous oeuvre of Sheikh Ahmed al-Aqsa'i, the founder of the Shaikhi movement in Persia, who was the first of the two forerunners of the Bab. We will examine a few of his extensive writings in the final part of class, the final class of part 1. So that's class number 12. Although Carl Jung did not know the name of the perplexing world he entered in late 1913, let alone the name Imaginal Realm, an exploration of the numerous historical examples Henri Corbin uncovered during his decades of meticulous study of the Islamic traditions, especially those found in Iran, will furnish us with a comprehensive, edifying description of the proper context in which to read Jung's experiences as he documented them in the Red Book. So in other words, I personally think that this whole 12 lessons that we're doing here are very important context, if you like, for our study of Corbin, or of Carl Jung, beg your pardon. So it's important to realize that expeditions into the world of Malakut, or the Imaginal Realm, were common among Muslim thinkers. In fact, this kind of experience was sanctioned by the Quran itself, as we will see in classes 5 and 6. And Linda, you're willing to do our last reading, number 13.
Islamic visionary literature is extensive, both in Arabic and Persian. There is a large body of accounts and commentaries devoted to the Mirage alone, that heavenly night voyage of the Prophet Muhammad, a visionary ideal which all Islamic mystics aspire to relive in their own experience. And the number and variety of versions are quite considerable. Shiite literature would add to this a vast body of writings on apparitions of each of the 12 Imams and of Fatima, daughter of Muhammad, and source of their lineage. Henri Corbin, The Voyage and the Messenger, Iran and Philosophy.
Okay, thank you. I can actually turn off sharing. We don't need that anymore. So just to give you a preview of where we're going, next class is going to be devoted to something called the Hymn of the Pearl, which is the only non-Muslim thing we're going to study between now and the end of this course. Class 5 will be devoted to Muhammad's mysterious night journey that was just referred to in that last passage, a voyage that countless generations of Islamic mystics have sought to duplicate in their own lives. In class 6, we will review the story of Kisra, the enigmatic servant of God who was given knowledge directly from God. Moses accompanies him as he performs 3 outwardly unfair or inappropriate actions: sinking a ship, killing a young man, and repaying a town's inhospitality weird, eh? By repairing a wall. Moses keenly questions his motives. At the end of the story, Kisra explains the circumstances unknown to Moses that made each of the actions fair and acceptable to God. In both of these cases, prophets encounter sacred figures who teach them divine lessons by means of non-physical events. The other visionary expeditions we will examine feature non-prophetic figures who travel to the east, a non-physical place where the sun of reality rises. So we're not talking about going to China or Japan. As we'll explain in class 4, one such voyage is documented in a Gnostic text from the 2nd or 3rd century after Christ. All the others occurred within the world of Islam. We will meet the mystical side of the great Muslim philosophers Ibn Sina in classes 7 and 8, and the short-lived but prolific Sukhrawardi Maktul in class number 9. Ibn Arabi, arguably the most significant Sufi in Islamic history, will provide accounts of his encounters with Kisra as well as detailed explanations of the imagination in class number 10. Jalaluddin Rumi's version of the story of Layla and Majnun that appears in Baha'u'llah's Seven Valleys will be the focus of class 11. And we will dip into the profound writings of Sheikh Ahmed al-Aqsa'i, one of the two brilliant lamps who prepared the country of Iran for the imminent coming of the Bab in class number 12. So that's a nice little preview of the voyage ahead of us. So I'm hoping that you're getting a clearer understanding of the imaginal realm, the world of Malakut, the Alam al-Mithal, all synonyms. And so I'd like to open it up to conversation here. Linda, oh, you've got a comment here. Let me see what this says. Are the infinite worlds of God that the human soul will experience as it evolves nearer to God after leaving the physical world contained in Malakut, since we cannot transcend the limitations of servitude? I'm not quite sure why you've got contained in quotes like that. Linda, do you want to just explain a little bit more where you're coming from on this? Linda, are you there?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My camera's not working.
Oh,
Well, we cannot evolve beyond our station of servitude, right? We can
True.
never evolve to the level of a manifestation, right?
Of course.
So then we speak about the worlds of God. We know that we will continually evolve towards God, but in within the limitations of our experience of servitude. So I'm just saying, to me, it seems logical that all of those worlds are, quote, contained in Malakut. Would you agree? Or if not, where are they?
Well,
Because
I think
we leave the physical world.
true, but we are capable of experiencing many worlds, as we've already experienced in our own dream worlds, for instance. Right? So we retain our
dream world is in
limitations.
Malakut.
Yes, but it's also available to us here. Somehow or other, we have access to it.
But we can't go into Jabarut as human souls, is my understanding, because that's the realm of the manifestations.
Well, I think we can visit it. There was Oh, Jack, are you there? You want to talk about Thomas?
Oh, yes, I can mention that Breakwell, Mark, I learned this from you, so you can explain it as well as I can. But in Abdul Baha's, I don't know if you want to call it a visiting tablet. Oh, Breakwell, my beloved, oh, my dear Breakwell, you all know that one.
Mm-hmm.
So in the original, I think it's in Arabic, I'm not sure, but he said he went, from what I remember what you said, Mark, you taught me this, he went to the threshold of Jabarut.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so
if Jabarut is the all highest paradise, that's beyond the concourse on high.
Mm-hmm.
So not everybody gets, I'd be very happy just to make it to the concourse on high, but not everybody gets to go to the all highest paradise. I mean, that's for the manifestations, I think.
Yeah, most of the time, I think that's correct.
But we're speaking as if it's like one world that the soul goes to after it separates from the body. Whereas my understanding is that there are infinite worlds that the human soul can evolve through to come nearer to God. So is that not correct? Because I've read it so many times that
no, you're right.
It's not like just, you know, the next world. It's like the next worlds. And there are many,
of course,
many iterations of progress for the human soul.
Yeah, I'm not going to challenge that at all. I agree fully with you. Now, I have to say that in order to make this concept clear, I've simplified it quite a bit. So it may have given you the impression that there's only one big world of the imaginal realm, but in fact, there are millions and billions of worlds within that world, just as there are in Nasut. Every single one of you is living in a different world than the rest of us because of the combination, even when you're married, even because of the combination of the experiences that you've had during your life that nobody else has had. Your world is different than your wife's or whoever you happen to be near. Okay. So, I mean, we're talking about just one Nasut, but in fact, that's covering a multitude of possibilities. And I think the same is true of the other worlds that we're blithely putting in a list with 5 names in it. Makes it look ridiculously simple, but I think it's covering up a complexity that is similar to the complexity of the universe as it's being found now with the trillions of galaxies, let alone planets and suns. Does that help, Linda? Or...
Yes, absolutely. I think that's the answer. Yes, to my question.
Okay, I'm happy.
Mark,
Okay, so
there was
yeah,
a
there's
question earlier from Leslie.
I see that. Where in this scheme is the tree beyond which we cannot pass? Phew. Excellent question. I'm not sure I have a ready answer for that.
It's the lote tree, right?
Yeah, correct. Sadratul Muntaha is the term. My suspicion is it's probably between Jabarut and Lahut. I don't think human beings get to go to Lahut, no matter how exalted they are. Because that's where the primal will is, and that's where the manifestations of God are in their union. I don't think that's available to us. But you could also make an argument that it would be between Lahut and Hahut. As Jack's diagram says, you know, there's no way that anything can go beyond. But I've always understood that tree beyond which there's no passing to be the manifestation of God himself.
Yes.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Birgam had his hand up, Mark, I noticed.
Oh, okay, sorry.
But as you said, in the Baha'i writing, we understand the Sidrat al-Muntaha is the manifestation of God.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can interact with the manifestation, but we certainly can't become one.
Or go beyond.
No. We can talk big, but we're just lying. I don't know. Does that help you, Leslie, or?
Well, somewhere I had the impression that most people can't pass it, but on occasion the rules get bent and some people are allowed to go a little farther than others.
I don't think they go past the tree.
Okay.
There's lots of room between us and the tree.
Okay.
So, okay, so I see that Thomas has his hand up here. What's happening there?
Yes, I want to refer back to reading number 10 that comes from the obligatory prayer. So
Okay.
it seems to me that when we talk about I testify, that means that we have to have some basis for experience or understanding of all four of these worlds that are mentioned. Is that correct? So there's some kind of simultaneous awareness that we could possibly have. Is that?
Yeah, to a limited degree. I mean,
Well, to some degree.
Yeah.
So that we could testify. If we couldn't testify, then we couldn't have any kind of awareness of it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that means that these worlds, I used to think of them as hierarchical, but I guess we should think of them as they're being nested one within inside the other, so that in that way it would be, of course, I guess if they were hierarchical, like you said, the manifestations appear in all of them at different versions of themselves, but it seems like maybe that if they're nested in each other, then we could be in all of those at the same moment. Just my thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's fair enough. I was just reading a story by one of my favorite professors at Carleton, who is describing a fictitious conversation between a student and a sage. The student was on his way to university to his course in religion, and was carrying his coffee going through a park, and there was a bench off to the side, and all of a sudden there was this dignified looking gentleman sitting there. He went over and talked to him and said, "Who are you?" etc. But the interesting point was that this guy had been there all along. He had been watching him the whole time. But the student had never seen him before that day. His state of preparation wasn't sufficient for him to be able to visualize that person.
That reminds me of shamanistic legends I've read when I was a university student.
Yeah, when you get to that level, there's a lot of overlap between the different religions of the world. There really is.
Like when the student is ready, the teacher will appear?
Literally in this particular case. And you'll see in at least one of the recitals that that's actually the basis of the story. That somebody meets their guide, if you like, only when they have done enough preparation to be able to perceive them. And so to me, the process of becoming spiritual is becoming more subtle in your vision and your understanding. Being able to see those differences that were in that quotation we just read now from the long obligatory prayer. Until you can see the differences between those, it's just going to pass you by. You're just going to read the words and not understand anything from it. But once you have the vocabulary and the understanding that goes with those terms, then things open up to you. Okay, Aaron and Bill and Sherry. Okay, who's talking tonight?
It's Bill this time.
Welcome back, by the way. He just moved back here from the States.
Yes, we were happy to be in Canada. It seems like good timing. The question I had was, but it is a little more pedestrian in the level. I hate to bring us back down because this is really good, but
feel free.
What is the distinctions and relation relationship to these worlds that we're discussing, and the existence of dimensions that beyond what we see in our physical reality, that we know that there are multitudinous dimensions. Is there a relationship in terms of understanding or definition, or even interrelation between the concept of dimensions, as well as in the concept of these whether they're contained in each other or hierarchical worlds?
No, I mean, these are just human pathetic attempts to understand the information we're being given. So, I mean, one of the most natural ways we do it is by putting things in a hierarchy. But if you come from a native tradition, for instance, you're going to be talking about a circle within circles as a nest, for instance. So you're sort of betraying yourself by the one that you latch on to first. You know, it's telling the world more about you and the upbringing you've had than it is about the reality that you're trying to describe. Does that make sense? So these are artificial, I think, is what I'm saying.
So, yeah, what is it you're saying is artificial?
The hierarchy or the circles or whatever other structure we try to impose on the concepts that we're being given.
I see. So these are distinctions that we're making just so that we can better understand the whole.
Pretty much.
They're not like actual finite distinctions between one thing and the other.
Well, to my mind, there's enough information there that seems to distinguish Malakut from Nasut that I think we could sort of make a fuzzy line between them. But when you try and zero in on, you know, is this Malakut, is that Nasut, you know, and really define it down to the tiniest degree, you're going to get into trouble because there are going to be exceptions.
So what I'm really trying to find out is what do we mean when we say dimensions? You know, like these unseen dimensions. Does that encompass these worlds, or are these worlds actually different dimensions that we can ascribe to, or are dimensions actually components of these worlds?
Probably the dimensions are components. Because dimensions is a physical human notion, right? When you get there, I don't think you're worrying about what dimension I'm in. You're just having the experience. And then later you try and figure out what the hell happened to me, which is exactly what Carl Jung experienced for a long, long time. He didn't understand what was going on, but he knew that he had to pursue what he was doing in order to be eventually able to figure it out.
See,
I don't know. At some point, we're just talking words here. Okay, I see that Fred is ready to send some sort of really difficult question my way.
No. Now, in fact, my question is regarding that reading item number 10 also.
Oh, yeah.
Where the question is that, from what I understand, and I could be quite wrong, in the Baha'i writings, and specifically in Baha'u'llah's writings, there is no mention of Hahut. Is that correct? Although there are implications of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if that is correct, then can one assume that the word Hova in Hovallah, or H, Ha, like Ayama, would that be an indication of reference to Hahut?
Yes, I definitely would agree it is.
you
The,
think
the
it is?
term Hahut comes from Sufism.
From Sufism, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
So
not in Baha'u'llah's Sufi writings, I should call them, right? Yeah, he
True.
never refers to Hahut.
no, but Hua would definitely be an equivalent, I think.
Hua would be an equivalent to that.
And if you read Mujan Momin's article, the God of Baha'u'llah, which is a masterful piece of work, he says that all you can say about the divine essence is he.
Yeah.
Don't bother trying to make a sentence. As soon as you do, everybody knows you don't know what you're talking about. All you can say is he. So Hua is the word in Arabic and Persians.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I agree with you. You're right.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, is that Rob or Roxanne who would like to talk? Oh, you're muted. There you go.
Yeah, I have lots of questions. Well,
Uh-oh.
regarding the different worlds, I'm struck because we're always using the terms of our physical reality. So we think of dimensions, we think of distance. We look at the cosmos, the universes, and these dimensions that are being described, as you were saying, in the indigenous philosophies, they could be circles, but they could be simultaneously in the same space. There is all of our reference points are related to our knowledge and our understanding. And these things aren't defined that way, so we're just guessing. I have a real interest in the subject of dreams. I've known many people who've told me they've had spiritual dreams, and I may have had one or two, but mostly they're very bizarre and hard to understand. And I really don't see any parallels of what I've seen in my dream in my life. And I wonder, how does one extract the spiritual from these bizarre movies that we're looking at? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, that's a real tough question. Jeez. Well, dreams are a little like what I was talking about earlier about, using a single term like Nasut or Malakut and thinking that it's only one thing. There's a gigantic range of the types of dreams that you can have. And, the literature suggests that probably the vast majority of what we dream is really some kind of a processing of the experiences that you've had in the day, or sort of a testing out of possibilities of some big thing you've got in the next day that you're worried about. So they're very mundane most of the time, or even nonsensical. And it's a waste of time to try and make something out of that. But when you have one of those spiritual dreams that you're talking about, in my own case, I know that they're more vivid than the other types of dreams. And typically they have somebody fairly important in them. So you might dream of Abdu'l-Baha, for instance, or Jesus, or, that kind of thing that really signals to you, oh, this is a special dream. I need to pay attention to it. I need to think about this when I come back here, because it's actually trying to convey something that would be useful to me. Those are the ones I would labor over. The rest I wouldn't worry about.
I think that's a very good point. I thank you for that, because the vividness is probably a good indicator of something worth paying attention to.
And it relates to that one reading that we looked at where as you go up the scale of the hierarchy, you become more and more real. So it's sort of my way of explaining that at the low levels of Malakut, there's a lot of noise, right? There's a lot of interaction between what's happened to you here and what's could be happening there. But as you slowly drift up into more purely Malakut, then the vividness begins to increase. And that to me is where you really start to pay attention. Okay, Elizabeth, what's up? Oh, you're muted again.
About that. Well, I mean, like Rob, I mean, I've had one or two was spiritually significant dreams. I mean, I dreamt of Shoghi Effendi once, years ago, for example. But like him, I mean, I have a lot of the dreams. I mean, they're confusing. They're confusing. They seem to be misleading. And I don't even remember them when I wake up. But I'm wondering whether the purpose of these dreams it's a cleansing process. When you're asleep, you perhaps the various experiences that you've had during your life, sort of come back to you in your dreams in a very convoluted form. And I just think, well, maybe it's like a sort of cleansing process. And I kind of, wake up sort of feeling, well, sort of fairly, because some rather horrendous things happened. You're going through all these, and then you wake up, and then I think, and then I thought, this is not real. That it's not happening now. That this is happening in my dream, and then you feel, you feel, much calmer, much better for it. I mean, that's what I seem to be getting from my dreams. I'm saying it for what it's worth. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think that's quite a fair assessment. Okay, Jack, I presume you're going to talk about dreams because of your own experiences.
Well, before that, did you notice Hangame's question? Did you all?
Oh, no, I beg your pardon. I didn't. Was it in the chat?
Yeah, which world do we go to when we dream? And then after your answer, I'll make a couple of comments.
Well, I would say that we go to maybe the low level of Malakut. Yeah, and then maybe if you're lucky, you go a little bit higher than usual once in a while, when you really need a shot of spiritual energy or something.
Yeah, because Malakut is the world of vision, and that's what happens in dreams.
Exactly.
And as you pointed out, it can be a mixture. We can have, I don't know if nightmares happen in Malakut as well as the celestial, the more beautiful dreams of going to heaven or whatever it may happen to be. Is that all happening in Malakut? Everything from the earthly to the heavenly? Mark, do you think?
That's my sense. Now, I realized that I had a point that I wanted to make to Elizabeth to respond to her. Sorry, Jack, just to interrupt you for a minute. Baha'u'llah makes a point more than once in his writings about how important dreams are. And it seems to me that the real reason he's saying they are important is to prove to those people who are literalists, who are stuck in the physical reality alone, that there are other worlds in God's universe. That's why they're there. To cause us to think, oh, what is it that's different about dreams? Why is it that I have this experience now that I will actually go through in 10 years' time? He says that explicitly. So they raise questions that really make you pause and think about the nature of reality. That's what they're there for. Aside from the individual content that's directed to you specifically. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say to Elizabeth. Sorry. Did you want to say anything back?
Well, I just want to say thank you very much. I mean, it's very, very useful for me to have these clarifications, about dreams. But thank you very much.
Yeah, well, Elizabeth is right, because psychology has proven that the dream somehow cleanses and refreshes the brain. You may notice, for those of you who dream, and some people don't dream a lot, but you may notice after a dream, you feel more refreshed if you're lucky, of course, depending on the dream. If it's a nightmare, maybe you won't feel so refreshed. But I wanted just to make a couple of comments. Yeah, so this goes back to Linda's observation, Linda O, a while ago, and other things that came up. So here's a bit of a paradox. The soul contains all the states that are mentioned in the 7 valleys, but is not limited to those states, because Baha'u'llah explicitly says at the end of the 4 valleys that there are other worlds to which he hasn't even alluded to.
Correct. Yeah.
So we're in the realm of total mystery there, but it's my understanding that the soul contains all of these worlds. I don't think we can say that the soul contains all the worlds of God because we're in the human station. We don't have access to Jabarut and Lahut and so on and so forth. These are not meant for us. These are meant for superior beings. So you know, when you think about this, these things are contained within the human soul, these worlds. It's just that we don't, unless you have a mystical experience, and I've had quite a few in my lifetime, starting in childhood, actually.
Let's not go there, Jack.
No, I'm not going to any personal anecdotes at the moment, but, you know, they're all there. It's just that we don't have access to them normally. And, you know, Baha'u'llah says that the worlds of God are, quote, countless in their number and infinite in their range. Now, whether he's talking about the trillions of galaxies, you said there were trillions. I didn't know there were trillions. There's certainly billions. And the spiritual world. So it's totally mind-boggling, isn't it? We can't understand it. And Baha'u'llah explicitly says these things are known only to God alone. Only God can compute.
Yeah.
The infinity of these worlds.
I think the whole point of doing this course, Jack, is to help people to realize that these worlds do exist, that they do collide with us, or we do swim in them without realizing it, partly because they are so subtle. And we have to attune our attention to their realities. So one of the ways to do it is to see what other people who have attuned themselves to it have to say about them. So that's the long and the short. Now, Linda has brought my attention to a question that Durham asked 26 minutes ago in the chat that deserves to have some sort of answer. I don't think I'm the one who can to give you the answer, but he says, engineering question. Has Ibn Arabi or Ibn Sina mentioned any reference to the spaces among the 4 or 5 worlds? And he has in brackets the measure among the 4 or the 5 worlds. And he's laughing. I don't know. Is he pulling my leg or what? Come on, Durham. What do you tell me more about this?
Actually, I thought, you know, I mean, we divide them with horizontal lines. But I just want, I'm going to search this really with Ibn Sina and Ibn Arabi to see if they measured or they gave any space or measurement as to either in time or in light year or in what. I mean, it's just as an engineer, you know, thought of spaces and distances.
Well, I'm thinking that really what you're doing is you're focusing on the notion of barzakh, which is the transition zone between them, right?
Exactly. بينهما برزخ. You know, there is this line between them. It's not. But anyway, sorry if this.
That's an excellent research topic that you've set yourself. I'd be very curious to see what you come up with.
Sure.
Okay, so we have 3 minutes and we have 3 hands raised. Holy cow. So they have to be quick questions. Okay, David and Belinda from Gatineau. What's your question or comment? So you're muted at the moment. Sorry. You have to turn yourself on there. Should be in the bottom.
Okay.
There you
got it.
go.
Yeah. I mean, anything I say, I've always got questions behind it. But you know, reality, you know, we're always wondering or thinking about reality and what it is and so on and you know, in many ways, you know, you know, in this world, you know, it's very hard to get to it. Yeah, I was just going to say that you know, when it comes to dreaming, I think Baha'u'llah says you're not in your body.
Right.
Okay. So this is very interesting to me for the simple reason that you know, for everything that's visible, there is an invisible counterpart.
Yeah, that's came up with one of the.
And in a way, somewhere in this discussion, and that's been mentioned, there is an invisible counterpart to everything that's visible. And if there were not such a thing, then nothing would exist.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah, and so I think that you have an external reality, you have an internal or inner reality. And it's the inner reality that my understanding is that Ibn Arabi was concerned with.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay, so that everything that we're talking about really relates to that inner reality, and it's mysterious and very vast. Insofar as the soul is concerned, my understanding is we don't understand it.
Yeah. Well, we're told that.
You know, we can talk about it and ruminate about it all we want, but we don't understand it. And as you know, the passage in Gleanings where Baha'u'llah refers to the rational soul,
Yeah, what's that?
you would understand, I think, you know, hopefully what he's saying about it. And he ends up in that passage by saying that we have to know what our limitations are, and as human beings, and that it's very important to understand limitation.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons I'm doing this course.
Yeah.
Is to bump people up against the limits of their understanding to see whether or not we can go beyond it together.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, sorry, David. I think I need to have 2 more people talk. We're at 9:01 right now. I don't want to go over too much, but Rob or Roxanne, what do you have?
Yeah, I just had one question. I was fascinated by the what we read that said that we are always moving. And the question came up in my own mind is God the only thing that is static or absolute? I mean, I know that there's nothing absolute in creation. Everything is changing, but I was fascinated by the idea that there must always be movement and change. And how does that relate to the realm of God? Is God well, it's hard to ascribe anything to God because we use all these terms that
Yep.
are our terms, but static or not moving, not changing, I think that's been described in the writings. Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, I always conceive of God as the still point in the turning universe. And the motion that we have is in response to the love that began the whole process. We feel a yearning to return to that source. So that engenders action on our part. Even if we're not physically moving around, we're still cogitating, we're meditating, we're contemplating, etc. We're always striving to get closer to the source that gave birth to us. So that's why the world itself, in its entirety, is always moving. It's never totally happy with the way things are at the moment.
Thank you.
I don't know.
Mark, could I just add?
I wanted to ask Jamshid if he wanted to make a point.
I'll come back with Rob's.
Yeah, Jamshid, are you still on?
Yes, I'll be quick. So this is a question I have. So those who have experienced NDEs, like near-death experience, and the last stat I heard was like in North America alone was 15 million people. Would you say, yeah, it's really high. The numbers are high. So would you say they access Malakut,
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're taking the first steps on a journey that we'll all take. But for some reason or other, their journey gets interrupted and they end up back here, but they have memories of it, which to me is another way that God is telling us, oh, there's more to life than just the physical reality.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Thank you.
Okay, Jack.
Just going back to what David said, yes, Baha'u'llah is categorical about that no mind, however acute, will ever be able to unravel the mystery of the soul. But in response to Rob's question, if we look in the philosophy of Aristotle, for example, he says that God, well, I don't know if he uses the word God, but he calls, I'm sure he's referring to God as the prime mover. So he is the unmoved mover. As Mark says, everything else is in flux, everything else is change, evolution, advance, fall back, but God is dynamic but static. We view God as eternal, as unchanging. So he's the source of the movement, but he doesn't move himself. That's the way that I understand that. Talking, of course, just about the concept of God. Now, unless there's an exception to that, that's process theology. I'm not going to go into that. But they're in process theology.
No, you said you weren't going there.
Yeah. Okay.
So
but in process theology, God is changing because he's involved in the world. But that's not a Baha'i understanding, I don't think.
No, it isn't. Okay, folks, I think we're well over time now, 6 minutes over. So I would like to wrap it up by thanking you all very much for being such a wonderful audience, being so attentive, such thinking people.
Thank you, Mark, for telling us about Malakut.
So what I'm going to do this week is I have the Hymn of the Pearl that I would ask you all to read before the actual class next week. And it's about 8 pages long. So I thought, well, maybe I should just send it out with the attachments in the announcement on Sunday. But I thought, well, maybe in this particular case, I will send it out tomorrow when I announce that the recording of tonight is up. So I think that's what I'll do, just in case people don't have time on the weekend to read it or whatever. you can find time sometime in the next 5 or 6 days to read this short document, which I think you'll find interesting.
And what is the Hymn of the Pearl again, Mark?
Well, it's a story about a journey, a spiritual journey that has lots of themes in it that will carry through all the rest of the course. Okay, folks, I think that's all there is to it. So good night, everybody.
Aloha.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks to Linda, our pilot, too.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent.